I stood backstage at Paris Fashion Week, heart hammering as I adjusted the flowing silk of my debut collection's finale piece, when my phone buzzed with a message that made my blood run cold. Congratulations, little sister. I always knew you'd amount to something. Marcus. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of that man to reach out now after everything. My hands trembled as I gripped the phone, threatening to crush it, but then I heard my name being called. Serena Chen, 2 minutes to finale. I forced myself to breathe, to smile, to slip into the structured blazer that would be my armor as I took my bow. Marcus could wait. Let him watch from whatever hole he'd crawled into. Let him see exactly what I'd become without him. Because in my last life, I'd never made it to this runway. In my last life, I died at 23, broken and penniless, convinced I had no talent, no future, no worth, all because my stepbrother had spent 8 years systematically destroying every dream I'd ever had. The music swelled, the lights blazed, and as I stepped onto that runway to thunderous applause, I let myself remember exactly how I'd gotten here. It started when I was 10 years old, the day my mother married Richard Chen and moved us into his sprawling townhouse in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Richard was everything my late father hadn't been: wealthy, successful, established in New York's elite circles. And he came with a son, Marcus, who was 12 and looked at me with such cold assessment that first day that I should have known. But I was 10. I was hopeful. I'd lost my father to cancer 2 years earlier, and I desperately wanted a family again. This is Marcus, Richard said, his hand on his son's shoulder with obvious pride. He's at Dalton, top of his class. Very talented young man. I'm sure you two will get along beautifully. Marcus smiled at me then, and it didn't reach his eyes. Welcome to the family, Serena. My mother, Diane, squeezed my hand. She was so happy, practically glowing with relief at having found financial security again. We'd been struggling, living in a cramped Queens apartment, my mother working 2 jobs. This marriage was salvation for her. I wish I'd known it would be my damnation. The first few months were deceptive. Marcus largely ignored me, which I preferred to hostility. He was busy with his prestigious school, his music lessons, his fencing classes. Richard doted on him constantly, showing off Marcus's achievements to anyone who would listen. My mother encouraged me to be supportive, to be grateful for this new life. So I was quiet. I focused on my new school, on settling in. And I discovered something that made everything bearable. I could create beauty with fabric and thread. It started simply. I'd always liked drawing, and my grandmother had taught me basic sewing before she died. In the massive townhouse, there was a small room on the 3rd floor that nobody used, and I claimed it as my own. I'd sketch designs, save my allowance to buy fabric from the garment district, spend hours teaching myself from library books and online tutorials. Fashion became my escape, my joy, my secret world where I had control. By 12, I was making my own clothes. By 13, I was designing pieces for my classmates. I dreamed of Parsons, of internships, of someday showing at Fashion Week. That's when Marcus noticed. I was 14 when it happened, when I made the fatal mistake of telling my family about my dreams over dinner. Richard had been asking about my plans for high school, whether I was thinking about my future. I want to study fashion design, I said, my voice small but earnest. Maybe go to Parsons or FIT. I've been working on a portfolio, Marcus laughed. It was sharp and cruel, cutting through the dining room like a blade. Fashion design? Seriously? I felt my cheeks burn. What's wrong with fashion design? Nothing, if you have talent. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. But let's be real, Serena. Making weird dresses for your weird art school friends isn't the same as actual design. Have you seen real fashion? It's an industry. It's business. It's not for... Well. Not for what? My mother's voice was tight. Not for people who don't understand it. Marcus shrugged, and I saw Richard nodding slightly, as if Marcus was making a valid point. I'm just being honest. The fashion industry is incredibly competitive. You need connections, natural talent, a real eye for aesthetics. Serena, I've seen your clothes. They're cute, very homemade, but they're not exactly Chanel. My mother started to protest, but Richard cut her off. Marcus isn't wrong, Diane. We should be realistic about the girl's prospects. Fashion is a very difficult field. I could learn, I started. Some things can't be taught, Marcus said, and his smile was so kind, so concerned that to anyone else it would have looked like he was trying to protect me from disappointment. I'm just saying, maybe have a backup plan, something more practical. My mother was silent. She needed this marriage, needed Richard's money, and contradicting his golden son wasn't worth the risk. I saw her calculate it in real time, saw her choose financial security over defending my dreams. Maybe Marcus has a point, she said quietly. Fashion is very competitive, sweetheart. Maybe we should think about other options. That was the first death, the death of my mother's support. But I was stubborn. I kept designing, kept creating. I threw myself into it even harder, determined to prove Marcus wrong. I entered a local young designers competition when I was 15 and won second place. I was ecstatic, finally, validation from outside my own head. I came home with the ribbon and the modest prize check, ready to celebrate. Marcus was in the living room with Richard. I showed them the ribbon, the certificate, told them about the judge's comments on my fresh, a perspective, and strong technical skills. Second place, Marcus said thoughtfully. Who got first? A senior from LaGuardia, I admitted. She was really good, so you lost. He turned to Richard. That's nice that Serena got a participation ribbon. It wasn't a participation ribbon, it was second place out of over 100 entries, which means 99 people were better, and one person was good enough to actually win. Marcus stood up, and I'll never forget the way he looked at me then, like I was something pitiful. Look, I'm glad you had fun with your little hobby, but this is exactly what I mean. You're not actually good enough to compete at a real level. This was a local competition, probably judged by people's parents. Imagine trying to make it in New York or Paris or Milan. You'd be destroyed. Richard nodded along. My mother, who'd come in during this exchange, said nothing. I felt something break inside me that day. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. Fashion was all I had. That's when Marcus's campaign went from passive cruelty to active sabotage. It started small. My sketchbooks would go missing, only to reappear weeks later with pages torn out. Fabric I'd saved for would be mysteriously ruined. Bleach stains, scissors taken to it, accidents that Marcus apologized for with that same concerned smile. I'm so sorry, Serena. I didn't realize that was important. I thought it was just scrap fabric. He'd critique my outfits daily. Is that what you're wearing? I mean, you do you, but yikes. Or, did you make that? It's so obvious. You should really just buy clothes like a normal person. When I was 16 and applied for a summer intensive at Feti, my application mysteriously never arrived. Marcus had offered to mail it for me. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, he said when I got the notice that I'd missed the deadline. It must have fallen out of my bag. I'm such an idiot, but honestly, Serena, those programs are really expensive. Mom and Richard probably couldn't have afforded it anyway. The gaslighting was constant. He'd convinced me that my perceptions were wrong, that I was being oversensitive, that he was trying to help me. And because Richard worshipped him and my mother wouldn't contradict Richard, I had no allies. By the time I was 17, I'd started to believe him. Maybe I wasn't talented. Maybe my designs were derivative and that amateurish. Maybe I was delusional to think I could make it in fashion, but I still got into Parsons. Full scholarship based on my portfolio. It was my miracle, my vindication, proof that Marcus was wrong. I told them at dinner, my acceptance letter clutched in my shaking hands. That's wonderful, honey, my mother said. And for a moment I thought, maybe this time, Parsons gave you a scholarship? Marcus looked genuinely surprised. Then he frowned. That's weird. What do you mean, weird? I asked. Well, their scholarship program is usually for underprivileged students who couldn't otherwise afford it. He looked at Richard. Did you put that on her application, that she needed financial aid? We didn't think you'd want to pay for fashion school, my mother said carefully. Richard's expression darkened. You applied claiming financial hardship? That could damage my reputation, make it look like I'm not providing for my family. Marcus is right. This is embarrassing. But I need the scholarship, I said, panic rising. I can't afford Parsons otherwise. Then maybe you shouldn't go to Parsons. Richard's tone was final. There are perfectly good state schools with design programs. Or community college. You don't need an expensive private school for a hobby. It's not a hobby. I was crying now, humiliated. It's my career. It's my future. Serena, come on. Marcus's voice was so gentle, so reasonable. Dad's right. It's not fair to make him pay for something so impractical. Especially when you'll probably just end up changing your mind anyway. Most fashion students drop out or switch majors. The industry is brutal. You'd be crushed. My mother said nothing. She'd learned long ago not to fight battles that might cost her marriage. I went to Parsons anyway. I worked 3 jobs: retail, waitressing, tutoring, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on ramen and coffee to make up the difference the scholarship didn't cover. Marcus had been right about one thing. It was brutal, but it was also glorious. I found my people, other designers who understood the obsession, the need to create. I found professors who saw potential in me. I found my voice as a designer, developing a signature style that blended classical tailoring with unexpected architectural elements. I was flourishing. Finally. Then in my junior year, everything fell apart. I was working on my collection for the annual student showcase, the event that brought industry professionals, potential employers, press. It was career-making if you stood out. I'd poured everything into my 10-piece collection, working 16-hour days for months. My designs were strong, innovative. I knew it. 3 days before the showcase, I came to the studio and found my entire collection destroyed, slashed, burned, ruined beyond any possibility of repair. Years of work, thousands of dollars of fabric, my entire future, gone. I collapsed, literally fell to my knees in the wreckage and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Campus security found me there hours later. The investigation went nowhere. No cameras in that section of the studio, no witnesses, no evidence. But I knew with absolute certainty who'd done it. Marcus had visited campus 2 days earlier. Just wanted to see how my little sister was doing, he'd said, all smiles. He'd taken a tour of the facilities, including the studio spaces. He'd been alone for 15 minutes while I'd gone to grab us coffee. When I confronted him, he looked at me like I was insane. Are you seriously accusing me of vandalism? Serena, I know you're upset, but this is paranoid. Maybe one of your classmates was jealous? Or it was random, urban campus, lots of crime. But blaming me? He shook his head sadly. This is exactly why I worry about you. You're not stable enough for this pressure. Maybe you should take a break from school. I had no proof, just certainty. I tried to salvage something, anything. I worked for 48 hours straight, attempting to create even 3 showcase-worthy pieces from my existing fabric stash. I showed up to the showcase delirious with exhaustion, with half-finished garments that looked exactly like what they were, desperate last-minute attempts. I was a laughingstock, the promising designer who'd choked under pressure, who'd shown up unprepared to the most important event of her academic career. My reputation was destroyed. Internship offers that had been in discussion evaporated. Professors who'd championed me started treating me with disappointment. Marcus sent flowers to my dorm. The card read, "Sorry about the showcase. Maybe this is a sign. It's not too late to pursue something more realistic. Love, your brother who only wants what's best for you." I broke. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, failed my classes that semester, lost my scholarship, had to drop out. I moved back to Richard's townhouse because I had nowhere else to go. My mother was disappointed but not surprised. Richard barely acknowledged me. Marcus was so solicitous, so kind, offering to help me look for realistic jobs and practical career paths. I worked retail. I was a barista. I delivered food. I lived in that townhouse, but I wasn't family. I was the live-in help, the cautionary tale, the daughter who'd failed. Marcus, meanwhile, was thriving. He'd graduated Columbia with honors, had a prestigious job in finance, was dating a beautiful lawyer. Richard couldn't have been prouder. I was 23 when I got pneumonia, and because I had no health insurance and didn't want to burden anyone, didn't seek treatment until I collapsed at work. I died in a public hospital, alone, while my mother was at Marcus's engagement party. My last thought was, he was right. I was never good enough. And then I woke up. I woke up in my 14-year-old body at the dinner table, about to tell my family I wanted to study fashion design. The disorientation was total and overwhelming. I looked down at my younger hands, at my mother's unlined face, at Richard, who didn't yet have gray at his temples, and across from me, Marcus at 16, his eyes already calculating. I want to study fashion design, my younger self's voice said, and I realized with a shock that I was reliving the exact moment. Maybe go to Parsons or FAT. I've been working on a portfolio. Marcus opened his mouth to laugh, and something in me, the me that had died broken and alone, the me that had endured 9 years of his systematic abuse, snapped awake. Actually, I interrupted myself, and everyone looked at me in surprise. Never mind, I'm still figuring things out. Marcus closed his mouth, looking confused. Richard nodded approvingly. My mother looked relieved, and I smiled and excused myself, went up to my little third-floor sanctuary, and started planning. Because I knew things now. I knew exactly how Marcus operated, what he'd do, how he'd sabotage me. I knew every move in his playbook because I'd lived through it. But more than that, and this was the thing that made my heart race with possibility, I knew the future. I knew which designers would become famous, which trends would dominate, which fashion houses would rise and fall over the next 9 years. I'd spent my first life obsessively studying the industry, even as I'd failed to break into it. I'd memorized collections, analyzed trends, understood the business. I had knowledge. I had time. And this time, I had a plan. First rule, don't fight Marcus directly. He was smarter than me, more ruthless, and he had Richard's complete support. Any direct confrontation would end with me losing, just like last time. Second rule, become invaluable. If I was going to survive in this house, I needed to be useful enough that getting rid of me would cost them. Third rule, build resources outside this family. Friends, allies, connections that Marcus couldn't poison. Fourth rule, when the time came for revenge, make it absolute. I started immediately. I stopped talking about fashion design. When asked about my interests, I was vague, non-committal. I let them think I was just a quiet, artistic kid with no real ambitions. Marcus, deprived of his favorite target, seemed almost disappointed, but he left me mostly alone. Meanwhile, I planned. I knew that in 3 months, a relatively unknown indie designer named Yuki Tanaka would show a small collection at a Brooklyn warehouse that would get picked up by a major fashion blog. That blog post would catch the attention of a boutique owner in Soho who'd give Yuki her first retail opportunity. Within 2 years, Yuki would be showing at Fashion Week. Within 5, she'd be one of the most influential designers of our generation. In my last life, I'd worshipped her from afar. In this life, I'd met her at 15 when I'd snuck into that warehouse show with my best friend Jade, another fashion-obsessed misfit from my school. Jade, who in my last life had drifted away when Marcus had convinced me I was a burden, that my fashion obsession was annoying, that no one really liked me. This time, I held on to Jade tight, and I told her I had a crazy idea. There's this designer, I said, showing her sketches I'd drawn that were actually recreations of Yuki's future collection from memory. I heard she's showing in Brooklyn next month. Want to go? We went. We were the youngest people there by at least a decade. 2 awkward teenagers in a room full of cool industry people. But Yuki was nervous. It was her first real show, and barely 30 people had shown up. After the show, I approached her. "Your construction is incredible," I said, and I meant it. The way you structured the shoulders on that jacket, the draping on the skirts, it's architectural but still soft. It's really special. Yuki looked at me, this 14-year-old kid, and I saw her decide I was sincere. "Thank you," she said. "That means a lot. Are you a designer?" "I want to be," I said carefully. I'm still learning, but I love what you're doing. I think you're going to be huge." She laughed. "That's sweet. But this is a tough industry." "I know." I met her eyes. "But I'm serious. You have something special. And if you ever need an intern or an assistant or just someone to help out, I'm available. I'll work for free. I just want to learn. She gave me her email. Reach out in a few years when you're older. If I'm still doing this, maybe we can work something out. I reached out 2 weeks later with sketches, my own designs, the ones I'd developed in my last life, and a detailed analysis of current fashion trends and where I thought they were heading. Easy to predict when you'd already lived it. Yuki called me. How old are you? 14. And you drew these, wrote this analysis? Yes. There was a long pause. Can you come to my studio on Saturday? I want to talk to you. I became Yuki's unofficial apprentice at 14. She couldn't officially hire me, child labor laws, but I'd come to her tiny Bushwick studio every weekend and she'd teach me pattern making, draping, construction techniques, the business side of fashion, everything. In exchange, I'd share my predictions about trends, always framed as analysis and intuition. And because I was right, because I'd lived this timeline before, she started to trust my instincts. You have an incredible eye, she told me once. It's almost supernatural. If only she knew. At home, I was the perfect stepdaughter. Quiet, helpful, unobtrusive. I praised Marcus constantly, supported his achievements, made myself invisible. Richard warmed to me. My mother relaxed. Marcus, with no rebellion to crush, grew bored and focused his energy elsewhere. I saved every penny from my allowance and from small jobs, babysitting, tutoring. I watched fashion shows online, analyzed collections, studied the industry. I kept my sketchbooks hidden, my designs secret, and I planned for the showcase. In my last life, my Parsons collection had been destroyed 3 days before the show. It had been my junior year when I was 21. This time, I'd be ready. When I was 16, Yuki's career exploded exactly as I'd known it would. The boutique, the press, Fashion Week, she was overwhelmed with opportunities and offered me a real job. Part-time, working around school, but paid and official. You're my good luck charm, she said. Every trend you've predicted has come true. Every design, suggestion has made things better. I need you on my team. I also started building other connections. I knew which photographers would become famous, which stylists, which editors. I'd insert myself into their orbits early, make myself useful, prove my value before they became untouchable. By 17, I had a network. People who knew me, respected me, owed me favors. People Marcus didn't know about and couldn't touch. When I applied to Parsons, I did it without telling my family until after I'd been accepted with a full scholarship. That's wonderful, my mother said, and I saw the same relief on her face. Parsons gave you a scholarship? Marcus frowned, and I recognized the script. That's weird. It's merit-based, I said calmly before he could pivot to the financial aid angle. They have several. This one is for students with demonstrated talent and strong portfolios. It's actually very competitive. Still, Richard started, fashion school is... I've also been working with Yuki Tanaka for 3 years, I interrupted. She's offered me a permanent position after graduation. Fashion is a viable career for me. I have connections and experience most students won't have. I watched Marcus's eyes narrow. He hadn't known about Yuki, about any of it. I'd kept it hidden perfectly. Yuki Tanaka? Richard looked impressed despite himself. The designer who just showed at Fashion Week? Yes, I've been her assistant since I was 14. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked. I didn't want to make a big deal of it, I said with a modest smile. I wanted to prove I was serious first. Marcus looked like he'd bitten into something sour, but what could he say? I'd outmaneuvered him completely. I went to Parsons with money saved, connections made, and a plan. I kept my head down my first 2 years. Good grades, solid work, but nothing spectacular. Nothing that would attract attention or jealousy. I let other students be the stars while I honed my skills and prepared. Because I knew when Marcus would strike. Junior year, student showcase, 3 days before. So I made sure he'd have nothing to destroy. I created 2 collections. The first was real. My actual showcase collection, 10 pieces that represented my best work. I constructed them at Yuki's studio, stored them there, never brought them anywhere near campus. Only Yuki and Jade knew about them. The second was a decoy, 10 pieces that looked impressive on the rack but were actually much simpler designs, made from cheap fabric. I kept these in my campus studio, worked on them publicly, let people see them, and praise them. Junior year came. Marcus started finding excuses to visit. Just want to see how you're doing, make sure you're not too stressed. I showed him the decoy collection. Let him see where I stored them. Gave him every opportunity. 3 days before the showcase, I came to campus and found the decoys destroyed. Slashed and burned exactly like last time. I called campus security, filed a police report, let myself be seen crying, devastated. And then I went to Yuki's studio and got my real collection. The showcase was triumph. My pieces were sophisticated, innovative, perfectly constructed. They caught every eye in the room. I had buyers asking about production, editors requesting interviews, fashion houses offering internships. Marcus came to the showcase with my mother and Richard. I watched his face when he saw me succeed, saw the confusion, the anger, the dawning realization that somehow his sabotage had failed. After the show, he cornered me. How? He hissed. How what? I smiled at him. Your collection was destroyed. Oh, you saw the collection I kept on campus. I tilted my head. Did you think I'd be stupid enough to keep my real work somewhere you had access? Marcus, I've known you for 7 years. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate you? His face went white, then red. You're insane. I didn't do anything. Of course you didn't. Just like you didn't destroy my work last time. I let my smile widen. Oh, wait. There was no last time, silly me. I walked away and left him standing there. That was the beginning. I graduated Parsons top of my class. Yuki had promoted me to full designer on her team. I was getting my own press, my own recognition. At 22, I launched my own line. Small, just a capsule collection, but it sold out in hours. At 23, the age I'd died in my previous life, I was thriving, and Marcus was unraveling because I'd made sure of it. See, in my last life, I'd never questioned how Marcus afforded his lifestyle. He had a good job in finance, sure, but the luxury apartment, the expensive car, the constant travel, it had always seemed like just barely beyond his means, but I'd assumed Richard was helping him. In this life, with my future knowledge and my determination to understand my enemy, I dug deeper, and I discovered that Marcus was supplementing his income through insider trading. Nothing massive, nothing that would trigger immediate SEC investigation, but persistent, systematic, and very illegal. In my last life, he'd never been caught. He'd eventually move to a bigger firm, make partner, live happily ever after on his ill-gotten gains. In this life, I'd anonymously compiled evidence and sent it to the SEC the day after my Parsons showcase. The investigation took 2 years. Marcus didn't know it was happening until federal agents showed up at his office. I was at Fashion Week when I got the news. I was backstage preparing for my first solo show when Jade showed me the headline on her phone. Finance executive arrested for securities fraud. Marcus's face was on the screen, pale and shocked as he was led away in handcuffs. I felt nothing but satisfaction. The trial was long and public. Richard spent his fortune on lawyers, but the evidence was overwhelming. Marcus was convicted, sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, banned from ever working in finance again, and ordered to pay millions in fines and restitution. Richard, humiliated by his golden son's fall, suffered a stroke from the stress. He survived but was diminished, requiring constant care. My mother, faced with medical bills and legal fees, finally had to confront the reality that she'd chosen the wrong side. She reached out to me, apologetic, wanting a relationship. I was polite but distant. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. And me? I was ascending. My brand grew, my designs were featured in Vogue, Elle, Harper's Bazaar. Celebrities started wearing my pieces. I opened a boutique in Soho, then one in LA, then one in London. At 25, I was invited to show at Paris Fashion Week. Paris, the pinnacle, the dream. I created a collection that was part triumph, part catharsis. structured pieces that looked severe and architectural from the front, but revealed vulnerability and softness from behind. Armor that showed its humanity, power that acknowledged its wounds. The fashion press called it devastatingly emotional and a masterclass in subversive design. I called it Rebirth. Now, at 26, I stood backstage at my second Paris Fashion Week show, my phone in my hand, Marcus's message glowing on the screen. He'd been released early for good behavior, 3.5 years instead of 5, and apparently the first thing he'd done was reach out to me. Serena, my assistant touched my arm gently. They're ready for you. I deleted the message without responding and handed her my phone. Then I walked out onto that runway to a standing ovation. The collection was called Vindication, and every piece told a story. The opening look was a deconstructed blazer that referenced the one Marcus had mocked when I was 15, but elevated, perfected, powerful. The closing look was a wedding dress that incorporated fabric from my destroyed Parsons decoy collection, transformed into something beautiful. The front row was packed. Anna Wintour, editors from every major publication, celebrities, industry titans. Yuki was there, crying with pride. Jade was there, filming everything for the documentary about my rise. And in the back, I later learned, Marcus had somehow gotten in. He'd watched the whole show from the standing section, watching me receive praise, watching me succeed beyond anything he'd ever achieved, watching me become everything he'd told me I could never be. After the show, after the interviews and the photos and the congratulations, after the buyers placed their orders and the press declared my collection a defining moment for contemporary fashion, I found a quiet corner backstage. That's when he found me. Serena, I turned. Marcus looked older than 28, worn by prison and disgrace. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by something off the rack and slightly too large. His confidence had evaporated. "You got my message," he said. "I deleted it." He flinched. I wanted to congratulate you. This is incredible. You're incredible. I always knew." "Don't," my voice was sharp. "Don't you dare say you always knew. You spent 8 years telling me I was worthless. You destroyed my work, sabotaged my education, tried to kill my dreams. You laughed at me, Marcus. You laughed at my fashion sense, my ambitions, my hopes. You made me believe I was nothing." "I was jealous," he said quietly. "Dad always compared us, and you were so naturally talented at something beautiful, something creative. I had to work for everything, and it still wasn't. I was insecure and cruel, and I'm sorry. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. I know I can never make it right, but I'm sorry." I studied him. In my last life, I'd never gotten this apology because I died believing his lies. Part of me had wondered in this life if I'd feel satisfaction from his remorse. I felt nothing. "You're sorry you got caught," I said. "You're sorry you lost everything. You're sorry that the little sister you tried to destroy is now more successful than you'll ever be. But you're not actually sorry for what you did to me. Because if you were, you wouldn't have sent that message trying to take credit for my success. That's not... I always knew you'd amount to something," I quoted. "That's what you wrote. Like you had any part in this. Like your abuse was somehow motivating rather than devastating. You almost killed me, Marcus. In another life..." I stopped myself. "You almost broke me completely. And now you want forgiveness?" "I want a chance," he said desperately. "I have nothing left. Dad won't speak to me. I can't work in my field. I have no money, no prospects. Your family. I thought maybe..." "I'm not your family." My voice was cold. "I never was. I was your victim. And now I'm the person who ensured you faced consequences." His eyes widened. "What?" "The SEC investigation. I'm the one who submitted the evidence." I smiled at his shocked expression. "You thought I wouldn't notice the insider trading? I notice everything now, Marcus. I had to learn to survive you." He looked genuinely devastated. "You destroyed my life." "No, you destroyed your life. I just made sure you faced justice for it." I picked up my bag. "And for what you did to me." I'm your brother? You were never my brother, you were my tormentor. And now you're nothing to me at all. I walked away from him then, out of the backstage area, into the Paris night where my team was waiting to celebrate. I didn't look back. 2 years later, I'm 28 years old, 5 years past the age I died in my first life, and I'm living a dream I didn't dare imagine even after my rebirth. My brand is international. I have boutiques in every major fashion capital. I've designed for royalty, for presidents, for the most famous women in the world. I've won every major fashion award. My net worth is in the tens of millions, but more than that, I'm happy. I have true friends. Jade is my creative director and business partner. Yuki is my mentor and confidant. I have a community of designers, artists, and creators who respect me and whom I respect in turn. I have a beautiful apartment in Paris, a pied-à-terre in New York, a house in the hills above Los Angeles. I have freedom, security, and peace. I never married. I dated, had relationships, but I've learned that I don't need romantic love to feel complete. My work is my passion, my team is my family, and that's enough. My mother and I have a polite, distant relationship. She comes to my shows and sends birthday cards, and we have occasional lunches where we talk about nothing important. She made her choice long ago, and we both live with it. Richard died last year. I went to the funeral because my mother asked me to. Marcus was there, looking even more worn. He has a job now, managing a warehouse in New Jersey. He's been trying to rebuild, but the taint of his conviction follows him everywhere. We didn't speak at the funeral. We haven't spoken since Paris. Occasionally, I still get messages from him. Congratulations on new collections, references to family, requests for loans or connections. I delete them all without reading past the first line. Some people don't deserve second chances. Some people don't deserve forgiveness. And that's okay. Because my revenge wasn't just destroying his career, though that was satisfying. My revenge was succeeding so completely, so spectacularly, that he has to watch from the sidelines as I live the life he tried to prevent me from having. Every fashion show, every magazine cover, every award, it's proof that he was wrong, that his cruelty didn't define me, that I was always talented enough, strong enough, worthy enough. He laughed at my fashion sense. He said I'd never make it, that I had no talent, that I should give up. Now Paris Fashion Week, hell, New York, London, and Milan too, has me on the runway season after season. Now I'm the one defining fashion, shaping trends, influencing the industry. Now I'm the one laughing. Though really, I'm not laughing. I'm too busy creating, innovating, building an empire. I'm too busy living. Last week, I was approached by the Costume Institute at the Met about a retrospective of my work. They want to display my collections, discuss my influence on contemporary fashion, highlight my journey from unknown design student to industry titan. The exhibition is tentatively titled Serena Chen, Phoenix Rising. I said yes, because that's what I am. Not the broken girl who died at 23, not the victim Marcus tried to create, but something entirely new, something forged in fire and determination and the impossible gift of a second chance. I am proof that our worst moments don't define us, that our abusers don't win unless we let them, that talent and hard work and strategic thinking can overcome even the most systematic sabotage. I am successful, I am respected, I am free, and Marcus, wherever he is, whatever he's doing, has to live with the knowledge that he lost. That despite every advantage, wealth, family support, years of my life, he still couldn't break me. In fact, he made me stronger because every time I doubted myself during my second chance, I remembered what he'd done. Every time I wanted to give up, I thought about proving him wrong. Every time I faced a setback, I reminded myself that I'd already survived worse and come back from literal death. He was my villain, but he was also, inadvertently, my motivation. And now he's just irrelevant. I'm in my Paris atelier now, sketching designs for next season's collection. My team is scattered around the space, pattern makers, seamstresses, assistants, all working on bringing my vision to life. Music plays softly in the background. Coffee is always brewing. The atmosphere is one of creative joy and passionate collaboration. This is my dream. This is my victory. Outside, Paris gleams in the afternoon sun. Inside, I'm creating beauty, the same thing I've always loved to do, the same passion Marcus tried to destroy. But I'm still here, still creating, still rising. My phone buzzes with a message from Jade. Vogue wants to do a feature on your origin story. How much do we tell them? I smile and type back, everything, the whole truth. Because my story, both lives of it, deserves to be told. The abuse, the rebirth, the revenge, the triumph, all of it. Let Marcus read it in Vogue and know that even his cruelty became part of my legend. Let the world know that a girl who was told she was worthless became one of the most important designers of her generation. Let everyone see that second chances, when seized with both hands and fierce determination, can change everything. I set down my phone and pick up my sketchbook again. The design taking shape on the page is bold, architectural, powerful, armor made beautiful, strength made elegant. It's perfect. I am perfect. Not in the sense of flawless, but in the sense of complete, whole, healed. Marcus laughed at my fashion sense. Paris Fashion Week and the entire world knows better. And that, in the end, is the sweetest revenge of all.